Hello and welcome to our homestead. We are going to be talking about the pros and cons of starting seeds indoors versus direct sowing outside. Let's get going. As you can see, we do start some seeds indoors, but we are really specific about which types of plants we do start, and I'll tell you why in a moment. So let's talk about some of the pros for starting your seeds for transplant inside. And this will apply in both the north and the south for different reasons. But a similar reason is weather. Now, here in the south, our spring breaks pretty quickly in late February to early March. And I know in the north, from growing up in Michigan, you can still have snow in May. Starting these seedlings inside gives you more flexibility on when to put them out if you have an odd weather year. For us in Zone 8B, it's important to get some of these like tomatoes out early because in the heat of the summer, tomatoes will not produce. So for me to get an early harvest of tomatoes, it's important to get them out early. And it's especially helpful if your spring is cold and wet at the same time because that will inhibit germination of your seeds if you're direct sowing outside. So I told you why we start tomatoes early, but let me tell you why we start peppers and eggplants early. Now the reason I start peppers and eggplants inside is because of their long germination times. Some of these take 14 days to actually germinate and start to come up. And the other reason is they need a lot of warmth to actually germinate. So you can see under here, we have a heating mat. These seeds usually like around 85 degrees to germinate. And if I tried to direct sow them outside right now, I'd have zero luck. And if I did directly sow them outside and they did germinate, it's going to take them an incredibly long time to get to a mature plant. So long so that I might not get any fruit by the time fall hits. So if you didn't know, peppers are actually a perennial, and you can overwinter these inside of a greenhouse or pot them and bring them into your house. I've done a video on that. Check that out at the top of the screen. Now I also start exotics inside, like this moringa plant or malunggay. Depends on which part of the Philippines you're from or Southeast Asia. It's called a few different things, but this is a superfood, high in vitamin C, and it'll produce a small tree. But I am starting them here inside because it is semi-tropical or subtropical, and they are a little difficult to get started outside if you don't have the proper temperatures. If you're interested in any of our growing equipment here, I have everything listed in the description below. Our lights, our heat mats, these actual grow trays, which are very nice, and the little pots. Now, some people say that starting seeds for transplant inside is easier. We'll talk about the pros of direct seeding, and you'll see really quickly that that's probably not the case. Because one of the cons of starting seeds inside is you have to constantly monitor it, especially the water. If you're starting seeds inside, you are going to use smaller containers like these plugs or these little pots here. And those little items dry out quick. The seed starting mixture in there, even though it has vermiculite or perlite in it, does dry out quicker than if you put it in a huge garden bed outside. So if you're not constantly on top of your seedlings, making sure the moisture is correct and the warmth and the light are correct, then you could have a lot of dead seedlings really easily inside. Let's head outside and I'm going to talk about all of the pros of direct seeding. So obviously nature designed seeds to be direct sown. That is the way things grow, and for most seeds, that is the best way to grow them. And there are many seeds that you cannot start as transplants inside. Or if you attempt to do it, they are going to be extremely difficult to try to get outside and into a garden bed. And one of those I'm talking about is carrots. Carrots are extremely tiny seeds and they are meant to be direct sown. Now let's take plants like melons and squash, for example. Melons and squash have extremely delicate roots and stems, and they do not take to transplanting very well at all. And that's one of the big pros to direct seeding, is that you do not shock the seedlings when you're taking them out of the pots and putting them in the ground. Now, I just mentioned that a lot of people say that starting seeds inside is easier. Well, in my opinion, it's not when you're actually putting them in the garden. When you're direct sowing seeds, it's fairly easy to just scrape back a row or poke your hole in the soil to drop 1 or 2 seeds. When you're transplanting, you're actually digging a large hole to put those seedlings in. In my opinion, that is more work. You could see it one way or the other. That's kind of up to you. So I just talked about the shock that transplants go through when you put them in the garden. When you direct sow seeds, they do not go through that shock at all. They are growing with the fluctuations in sun, in temperature, outside. They are adapting to that. If you have a seedling transplant inside that's held in a controlled environment, controlled temperature, controlled moisture, controlled lighting, when it gets outside, it's going to struggle a bit. Now, if you have something like a greenhouse and you want to start things in a greenhouse and then transplant them out into a garden bed outside, that shock is reduced. But starting something in a grow room inside your house is different. And the cool thing about direct seeding is those seeds are going to have those nutrients available to them right away when they need it. Their roots are going to be more established, deeper, and they're going to be more drought resistant. Because while you can control some watering outside, you can't control everything about the environment outside. So the plants are more hardy. And as you know, if you started seeds inside, you have to do what's called hardening off, which is actually taking the seedlings out to a protected area outside of your home from your grow room inside, giving them a little bit of light and some wind, and then taking them back in. You have to do this process for probably about a week to strengthen the plant. When you're direct sowing, you obviously don't need to do that. One of the only cons to direct sowing seeds in a garden is the temperature fluctuations. And depending on where you live in the country, those fluctuations could be pretty severe and they could be pretty late in the season. But overall, in our opinion, direct sowing your seeds in the garden is the best thing for you to do. Unless you have a very specific climate consideration like I talked about with our tomatoes here in Zone 8B. And then there are things like strawberries and garlic, which you should never attempt to try to start inside. And with both of these plants, you should never ever have to buy them more than one time. Things like strawberries and garlic multiply exponentially every year. We've got several videos on how to do both. Check those out at the top of the screen. I want to wish you a happy planting season. Get out there and get going. Now I want you to go check out this video right here, which shows you exactly how we built this Johnson Sioux bioreactor composter. Have a beautiful, blessed day. We'll see you next time. Bye.